right. Okay. So we are here visiting with John. John, can you tell me what exactly is your what exactly is your job with NASA? Is it with NASA, or are you like contracted with another company?
No, I'll give you an introduction and
Okay.
and a few of my bona fides,
Okay,
so
all
that
right.
I have some credibility here.
Okay.
My name is John Graf. I am a research engineer at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. If you're asking me about space stuff, I'll give you two bona fides.
Okay.
My PhD is in lunar soil science and lunar soil geology.
Wow.
When I was going to graduate school, there were 1,000 scientists who were studying the the lunar samples to understand the origin of the moon and the origin of the Earth-Moon system and the origin of the solar system.
Wow.
But there were very few people who were thinking about going back to the moon for an extended stay and thinking about the dirty, messy geotechnical aspects of can you design a spacesuit that doesn't get bogged down and clogged with the dust and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I took lunar samples and characterized them, tested them, photographed them. When you look at a grain of sand on the beach, it's ground down and it's smooth and it's very regular, because it's been tumbled down some stream somewhere. Mm-hmm. Lunar soil is made up of sand-sized grains that are incredibly fragile and knotty and gnarly and bumpy, and the shadow of a lunar soil grain looks like the coastline of Norway. All these little ins and outs.
Wow.
And I did a measurement and quantified the degree of reentrance, the degree of bumpiness, as a part of my PhD.
That's cool.
I now work in an engineering group at NASA that does the life support function. So we scrub CO2 from spacecraft cabin air, provide oxygen, maintain temperature and pressure, and do the air conditioning function. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Wisconsin, and my parents thought I should have studied harder in school so I could get a job closer to home, because Texas seems a long ways away. Mm-hmm. But they were impressed one time when on my birthday, one of the astronauts, a guy named Ron Guerin, called me on my birthday from the International Space Station to wish me a birthday. And it was a surprise. I picked up my cell phone and I was like, hello. And I didn't recognize the caller ID number because it came from space. So
that's hilarious.
So that was kind of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So tell me about what your students are doing and what you.
Okay, so we are we're studying about space, and there's so many different objectives that kind of go everywhere. And this year, I really tried hard to make what we learn real, like applying to a real world question, or like they have to they've made a lot of different things. They've designed. This one was a little bit more challenging for me because I had so many different objectives. Like they have to understand the phases of the moon and how the moon affects the earth, and then we had to talk about seasons and how the tilt of the earth has all that together. Well, we've done so much building and like real projects that the kids were like, Mrs. Danner, what are we doing with this one? And I'm like, I got nothing. I don't know what. And then I was sitting at lunch on a professional development day with some other teachers, and on my phone pops up the whole NASA announces they found 7 Earth-like rocky planets, or whatever the news headline said, and I'm like, that's it. So what they're doing, they are designing a mission plan, or in my other world, a mission briefing. So they're coming up with a detailed plan. They have to pick from some real, some creative license data on my part, real data of the planets of the TRAPPIST-1 system, that they picked 2 planets that they would want to send rovers to, kind of like the Mars rovers, to gather more information about, could this be a possible human relocation planet, or could we colonize it, or whatever. So that's what they have to do. So their driving question is, as mission planners, how can they design a mission plan to send rovers to 2 of the TRAPPIST-1 planets deemed habitable? So, and there's all these different background pieces that they're going to pull in, with like seasons and the geography and the weather of the planets, or between us and them, what could they encounter? So that's a really long answer to your question.
Okay, so your students need to make a few decisions on the kinds of things they'd like to do to organize a deep space mission to an impossibly far away planet.
Yes.
Is that about right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So maybe I could say a little bit about what NASA did to answer those kinds of questions for a exploration spacecraft that has already launched and has been a faraway place, which is Mars. Right?
Yes.
So if you can think about what NASA has already done with Mars, then you could kind of pivot on that and extrapolate to say, well, if you want to go someplace like many times further from Mars, you'd have a general structure of a Mars spacecraft, but you have to think about a few extra issues and a few extra problems.
Yes.
The Mars, there's a series of Mars exploration missions. Launch on a large single rocket, which usually launches from the Kennedy Space Center with a big giant of what is sitting on the pad is used up and burned as fuel, or stays in low Earth orbit. And a teeny little portion of this spacecraft leaves low Earth orbit and goes out to Mars, which on our chemical propulsion systems and our trajectories will take on the order of 18 months or 2 years to get from Earth to Mars.
Wow.
While it's going from Earth to Mars, it's getting further away from the sun. The temperature of the spacecraft is falling fast because it's out in deep space. It's getting less sunlight. It needs to communicate with a set of tracking antennas and radio transmitted instructions to the spacecraft. So it usually has a pointing antenna to get a narrow specific signal, but sort of an omni antenna that if it's not exactly pointed the wrong way, it can kind of readjust. So it has 2 ways of talking to Earth. It has a power supply that powers the spacecraft. And this power supply needs to keep itself warm and last for a long time. And the further away it gets, the cooler it gets. And it's got a set of instruments and cameras and observing things that individual scientists are asking their own questions to see if they can build something that's small enough to be sort of the size and shape of a Coke can, take very little power, and answer a fundamental question once you get this darn thing to the surface of Mars. So you need a clever little instrument to measure something simply that can answer an interesting question, and then report that instrument back. some of the instruments my friends have worked on take a tiny little mechanical drill. And so they drill out a little piece of rock, and then they suck it into a small container. And then in this small container, they heat it. And they heat it some more, and they heat it some more, and they heat it some more. And they learn the pressure of the little sample environment container as a function of how they're heating it. And so they can make some inferences about, if there's liquid water and you get it to the boiling point of water and you make steam, you would see a pressure signal along that side, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so, so that's an example of a kind of an instrument that was used on the surface of Mars. And your students may think about what kind of measurement they'd like to make. Congratulations, you're on the surface of a planet no one's ever seen before.
Mm-hmm.
What could you practically measure in a device that is the size of a Coke can that has sat unpowered and very cold for many years?
Yeah.
That would be an interesting kind of thing to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Getting to the surface of a planet is a kind of cool and interesting problem to solve and think about. And sometimes you can bring a parachute and you can slow yourself down.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you bring a rocket and sort of retro rocket fire to go back in. My favorite space capsule landing mechanism was a series of airbags that deployed just a few hundreds of meters above the Mars surface, which caused the spacecraft to bounce like a Super Ball. And it hit and impacted, and it bounced and it bounced and it bounced, and some of these things would bounce 32 times before it came to a full rest.
Wow.
And so asking yourself, how do you want to safely land and not crash your rover and your instruments and everything in it?
Yeah.
Might be a question that your students would be interested in.
Yeah. That's a good question.
You may want to think about what the difference is between sending something out to one of these newly discovered planets, which is a very, very far away, and how that would be different from the easy job of going to the moon or going to Mars.
Yeah.
And if you want to, this is a great student exercise. If you want to appreciate the challenge of distance, see if you can find a record of the number of successes and the number of failures of science probes that were intended to go to the moon and science probes that were intended to go to Mars.
Okay.
And compare the difference in distance between the moon and Mars.
Okay.
And then think about the distance to these distant planets.
Oh my gosh. That's mind-blowing just thinking about that.
Right? I mean, it's a beautiful plot.
Wow.
Between teachers and students, you could put that together.
Yeah.
And what's the failure rate? What's the distance?
Wow.
It's really
probably
far. It's really far, and far is hard.
Yeah. Wow. That's just. I'm guessing the success rate is probably 0.01%. Just off the top of my head, guessing.
A lot of things have crashed, and a lot of things have missed. Yes.
Oh man, it's like blowing up money.
Yeah, it's a hard job.
Wow. Okay.
I will recommend that I talk less and listen more.
Okay.
Your students should assemble some questions.
Okay.
And maybe we can do it by Skype, and maybe you could assemble them in an email.
Oh, that'd be great.
Or some combination of them.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, I'll have them, I'm sure, because they have lots of questions. They are very inquisitive young people. I think they would love that. They would love to Skype. We can see what your schedule works with, and because I've got a lot of seventh graders, so it could be a lot of talking all day long. But we can work out a schedule. I will have them get some questions together tomorrow, Monday, and I'll get them to you by midweek, definitely. My goal would be Tuesday, get them to you, and then we can work out that scheduling piece. So
let's do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is so great. I'm so excited. And I was going to share with you, there is a museum in Kansas City, specifically in Overland Park. It's called the Museum at Prairie Fire. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but I spoke with the president of the museum, and next fall, in September, they are opening, what's it called? Beyond Earth, and they have lots of different components to it. Like there's one like the current rover missions to Mars, like the Voyager stuff. There's all these different pieces. And she had heard about what we were doing, and we chatted, and she's actually invited my students to contribute some of their work to this exhibit that's going to be opening.
Nice.
So I'm like, like, this is so cool. So, so we've definitely upped the ante a little bit, and the kids were like, wait a minute, what does this mean? So I've had to explain to them what that's all about, and I think I'm still more excited than they are, but they're getting there. They're getting to understand the magnitude of this. This is truly a public audience for your work, and so I'm very excited. I'm very proud of them too. So
excellent. Congratulations. That's cool.
Thank you. Okay, so I will get some questions from them, and we will continue this more of a two-way, or them and you type of dialogue.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending your Sunday evening chatting with me, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, John. All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.